Welcome to Scoop World Order. We got a special guest. We're going to get right into it real quick. As always, it is Ohio State Michigan week. It is Wednesday. Big day. Not a lot of work gets done today. Thanksgiving, Turkey Day tomorrow, 3 good football games in the NFL. And then the game is coming on Saturday. So, again, appreciate your super chats. Appreciate all the support. Thank you so much for the likes. Thank you for following this channel, supporting this channel. Again, we're double dipping today because I had to bring in a very nasty and vile Michigan Wolverine, the most hated man in the world. James Yoder, one of my favorite and funniest human beings I've ever met, is here. He is in full regalia in his Michigan gear. It is Michigan versus the world.
I gotta step back. You see this bad boy. See that? Yeah, Michigan versus everybody.
Because his O.J. Simpson versus everybody shirt was at the cleaner, so he had to put that one on. So, James, how are you feeling? Again, this is a cyclone of hilarity for us Ohio State fans. I know that you guys are like, trying to defend something that's just been just like comically bad. I mean, it's like one of those things where you try to defend it, and at every turn, it's like there's something dumber that happens where it's like, oh, here's the guy at Central Michigan. He's got a mustache, his little Ray-Bans on. And then, here's all the money trail. Here's the coach getting fired on Friday. Like, what has it been like? Because again, you're a Michigan guy. Like, I get it. I was there for the Tressel scandal with Ohio State. Like, I get like when the walls are caving in. Like, how is it feeling? Like, I mean, because you don't know, you have no idea who's going to be on staff next year.
Yeah, I mean, I think it makes this game probably just seemingly mean so much. The take I've had this whole week is, I think the winner of this game, it means something to both schools a little differently. So Michigan wins. I feel better about Michigan 5 years from now than I will if they lose. I think either way, Ohio State is probably in a good position 5 years from now, win or lose. If Ohio State loses, though, I think the next month might be very tumultuous, and it's going to be just can you fire a coach like Green Day, who's probably, I think, the best winning percentage since he's come on as head coach in all of college football, right? Just for losing to Michigan 3 years in a row? You would think not, but I think it's going to turn into like a nauseating offseason for you guys. And maybe like Michigan wins, boom, we're right back in it. Harbaugh's back, 3 games to win a national title. And maybe Harbaugh, then he gets another chance at going for it. It brings him back to return. But overall, how are we feeling? It's been kind of annoying. I do think that when Harbaugh says Michigan's America's team, I don't think that's true necessarily, but I think there's a little bit of that. I think there's a lot of people who are like, why are they going after him, etc. But college football fans, it's pretty much unanimous. They're like lining up to take down Michigan and just praying and hoping that Ohio State gets it done. So I just, at the end of the day, I hope Harbaugh wasn't involved in any way. Now you're going to say, well, he would be an idiot if he didn't know what was going on. But we're talking about a Naval Academy grad and U.S. Marine. I mean, if I had that guy come and work me for free and just said, hey, I'm studying, I'm doing all this stuff, who am I to say that Jim Harbaugh wouldn't have taken him at his word, believed him? It's a 150-person organization, Michigan football, from 100 players, 50 staff members. You can't track what everybody's doing every time of the day, Kirk. You know that.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's the thing. The thing that would make me suspicious is, how are you so good at this? Like, show me what your system is. Because, like, that is where I'd be like, okay, you're picking these signs at a rate that no one's ever seen in history. What's your secret? Like, what are you doing? Like, because again, like, he's, I've been him. I've been a GA. I've been a guy at the bottom of the totem pole. Like, coordinators ain't trying to hear what I have to say, unless it's something that's like, it's a sniper bullet right to someone's head, which is, hey, they're going to be in cover 3. Hey, they're running to the right. Hey, like, and when you get that successive predicting streak going, coach is gonna be like, wow, he really knows his stuff. Wow, he's really getting it on. I don't know. So what? Again, this is gonna be the weirdest game. Is this I don't want to say the biggest, because like the 1-2 game just felt bigger because it was 1 versus 2. It never happened before. It was a 3:30 start. Is this like, where is this in the pantheon of games in your lifetime? Because for me, it might be 2, just because of the Harbaugh thing. But again, I also, Nevada and we wanted Harbaugh on the sideline because, like, I just think that makes it more of a natural, like, I like seeing the 2 head coaches who are the 2 generals, like, across the field and like the whole thing. I feel like it's like again, I played with Tress, worked with Urban. It's like, if they're not on that sideline, it diminishes it. Again, I'll take anyone against Michigan at this point, but what's your mentality with Sean Works? Again, he's going to be the line coach. he's got to be the head coach, and he has to be the play caller. And like
Yeah.
in a perfect world, you have 3 guys doing those jobs that are all excellent at their jobs. When you have one dude doing that, and he's only been a head coach for like, I don't know, like 3 games. I think he had one early in the season and like the last 2.
Yeah.
Like, what's your thought through all that?
Sure. So, I mean, certainly, Sherrod Moore hasn't proven himself as the head coach yet. Harbaugh, the word is that him and Harbaugh have been attached to the hip, like approach this entire week. We finally know, going in. Even last week, there's some thought, well, maybe they get a temporary injunction and Harbaugh coaches against Maryland, and then the thing happened Thursday. So this is really the first week in probably going back to like Michigan State when this thing first came out that you knew 100% going into game week who's going to play, who's going to coach, etc. So Harbaugh's approaching it, the game plan, he's strategizing it, and Sherrod Moore's at his hip. And I was told by somebody yesterday that Harbaugh's giving him a scenario sheet, right? Like 4th and 1 from the 39, under 5, up 3. Boop, go for it, don't go for it, to make sure that like he's like, this is what I would do, make your own calls. But as far as the hype of the game, it certainly reminds me a lot of 2016. I mean, there's the games over the last 25 97, of course. I think you maybe even say 2003 in there. Ohio State was defending national champions, and Tressa got those first 2 wins. And it's like, okay, cool. If Michigan loses this one, it just maybe delayed the run Ohio State went on in the year. So that was a big one. No undefeated teams, of course, but I think it was both 2 1-loss teams that season. So 03 was kind of like a step back. Clearly 06, and that one probably had more longevity of hype with Smith being the Heisman frontrunner and Michigan having, I think, a team you thought would be good, but in 2005 they were coming off a kind of a 7-5 season. But when Michigan beat Notre Dame's ass in the second week of the year, it was like, okay, Ohio State's preseason number 1, and it is just went time till they're 1-2, and then that happened about mid-October or so, and it was a month straight of 1 versus 2 hype, and then 16. And then the last 3 have been up there. So if you kind of just go against all those, I would probably say it's got to be like tied with 2006 because the only thing it's missing is the 1 versus 2. But I think the off the field stuff, Harbaugh not being there, the coaching staffs hating each other, the fans almost like at each other's necks across all walks of life, probably make it the most consequential one. If Michigan loses in 2006, they go into the Rose Bowl and they live to play another day. They've got a good team coming back the next year. I think the consequences of this one are bigger than any of those other ones because either team loses, I think it's going to be absolute chaos around their program for the next couple of months, and it could have rippling effects for years to come if something happens with certain players or coaching staffs based on the game. So the hype maybe is small, maybe a second or third, or a couple of those other games. I think the outcome probably means more than any of those other games, though.
Yeah, I think I totally agree with you. And it was weird because 06, I thought Michigan would be legit. And again, in 05, they were beat up, hurt, but they were beating us. And we were way better than they were in 05, but they were beating us in the big house. And we had the most dramatic, epic comeback ever with Troy Smith. But it was like, I knew that their parts were fantastic. Like, I mean, like Lamar Woodley, Henney, Jake Long, Crable, Press. I mean, they had dudes
you guys won that game because Lloyd Carr punted in that same scenario, literally at the 40-yard line, 4th and 4, some of that, punted and gave up a 10-point lead with 9 minutes left. So
literally, I was sitting on the bench looking at the clock, and I was like, "Are we really going to lose to these guys? They've got 3 losses already, and we're going to lose." And they, and again, But again, they had dudes, they had Gabe Watson. I mean, they had guys who were NFL. This Branch played 15 years in the league. I mean, so when they were good in 06, it didn't surprise me at all because I knew that they ran that zone system that year and they were legit. And again, that's the thing that, if I look at a weakness on this Michigan team, their offensive tackles are not great. And again, I was like, those aren't like Jake Long and Lawan and the guys that I've seen. What are some weaknesses that you think Ohio State will try to exploit? And I'll do the vice versa, for you guys, because I think your tackles aren't as good. Your interior guys are excellent. But it just, again, it's, you're always trying to pick where would they go. And again, I feel like with Sherrod Moore, his whoopee is to run the ball a lot. And you guys are going to try to run the ball, shorten the clock, physically dominate us like you have the last 2 years. But what do you think are things that Ohio State could attempt to exploit? Because you've watched Michigan more than anybody.
Yeah. So, I mean, on the defensive side of the ball, not having their linebackers coach, I think that's got to make a difference in some regard, right?
Now these
are returning starters, Mike Barrett, Junior Colson, but just, okay, you're down a coach. 9 days before this game. That's why I'm giving Ohio State. I think Eichenberg's a good player. I think you guys got good linebackers. But in my preview that I just put out earlier on Wednesday here, I think Ohio State's got the edge of linebackers, if just for that reason in particular. So that's one area. Now, how they're going to exploit it, that's up to the Ohio State's offense. On the other side of the ball this is a clear step below offensive line than the last 2 years. But
Oh yeah.
I go back to 2021. I think the rushing attack in the second half against Ohio State, that alone, like, kind of hyped this offensive line up and won the Joe Moore Award and all this different stuff. But, like, I don't think prior to that game that people were out there saying, oh, man, this is the best offensive line that we've seen at Michigan in a decade or anything like that. It was a really good one, and they came together and played the best game of their lives as a unit in this game. So there's still potential there. I don't know. So from an offensive line perspective, they have struggled all year off the edges with protecting JJ. And that didn't really hurt them because JJ's frankly been one of the best on the run quarterbacks I've seen out of Michigan, maybe ever, where the pocket doesn't matter to him. And he could probably even sometimes throw more accurately when he can get outside and guys scramble away and play a little junkyard ball. So JJ's been hobbled, right? I think it's out there in the news, et cetera. I mean, he's had a hurt ankle since I think it was the Purdue game 3 weeks ago, coming out of the Michigan State, and then got a knee injury late in the Penn State game. And so is he going to do a Lance Harbaugh from Varsity Blues and, shoot me up with some Toradol and get out there and run? I hope so, JJ. I hope so. I mean, the guy's a winner, but if the offensive line struggles to protect JJ and even maybe struggles on the run, then they move the ball, they're going to have JJ scramble and do it. I haven't seen it the last couple weeks in particular. Definitely not last week. Now, the other thing that's really, I think this is one of the keys of the game for both teams, but from Michigan's perspective, is Michigan has really sucked at throwing touchdown passes in the red zone under Jim Harbaugh. And even this season with JJ, he's got 12 touchdown passes in the red zone. But I think like 9 or 10 of those, the last look, I think it was either 9 or 10, have been him off script, out of the pocket. I think it's only 3 touchdown passes where he has taken a snap inside the 20, stayed in the pocket, thrown a pass, and it was a touchdown. So that's a concern for me. And right, the only time they threw really towards the end zone last week against Maryland, right before half, picked off. And I think it's a struggle. Now, conversely, I think it's an area Ohio State struggled this year in particular as well, is just throwing touchdowns in the red zone. And that's something that last 2 years, it's pretty clear Michigan's defense was bend but don't break. Let them wear down clock, make Ohio State throw more so we know it's coming to them inside the 20s, and then lock down and cover where Stroud would go to normally inside the 20s. And so he was a great red zone passer, Stroud was, from what I saw, and wasn't able to get it done against Michigan. So I think Michigan's red zone passing is a challenge. If you kind of combine that with the weaker than expected offensive line from the last couple of years, how does Michigan score touchdowns? Unless last year it was 75 yards, 45 yards, 75 yards, like all those touchdowns were long plays. So none of those two factors for Michigan really came into play.
No, I agree. Yeah, it's something that's kind of it's something that I am critical of Ryan Day of sometimes, is we do like some of the heavy stuff that you guys do. We bring in the extra offensive lineman. We do that down in the goal line, and we take Marvin off the field on like the 4-yard line. And I'm like, why would you ever take Marvin Harrison off the field in like the short red area? Because he's terrifying. Because if he's one up, you should throw it to him. If he's doubled, then you're gonna have one less guy in the box. But we love doing the same thing that you guys do. Do you like when they do like your heavy package? I don't know if you guys have like some fancy, like we call it Bison, where you bring in the extra lineman, and then you guys also bring in another lineman that's like in 93. Like, do you like that? Has that been a big success to you guys? I think it's easy to defend. Granted, I can say it's easy to defend on like a grease board or chalkboard, but you can still get mauled up front. But I just think that when you take speed off the field and you have one less eligible receiver, it's a lot easier to go against that. But what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, Harbaugh ran it quite a bit in 2015, 16, a little bit 2018 here and there, but it's gone away the last few years. I haven't seen him run it even as much the last couple. And so it probably was needed against Penn State. I mean, Carson Barnhart at the right tackle was just getting owned off the side. And I think it was going to get, that's one of the hits there is probably why JJ is a little bit hobbled from that first half in that game. So if it's working, sure, go for it. When Harbaugh got the job at Michigan, I was going to do an article that was behind the scenes. I never actually published it because it just took too long to get some guys to talk. I was like, okay, some people have written this, but I talked to a bunch of old ex-Stanford players, and we focused on the 2007 USC Stanford and the 2009. It was like the 40-point comeback or underdog. The 2009 was the one where Stanford ran like 26 out of 27 plays to end the game and won like 55-21 20 on Pete Carroll, and they were running that 7-7 package the entire time. And he was like, first 5-6 times, one of the offensive linemen told me they got in, like they knew where it was coming, but so did we. And it was just like, okay, let's hit him again. And ultimately just started breaking their spirits once we got in the fourth quarter. So if it's working, cool, do for it. But Michigan's got to have something that goes off. And if it's just like you have two guys on the left side of the line, we're running to the left side of the line every time, that might work for a player too. But if Ohio State knows it's not going to work that long, it's got to be do that. I don't know. Go to a player. I think about last year, the Kalel Mullings jump pass, right? Do something like that, and that should have gone for a touchdown if he could throw the ball more than 10 feet. But if it works, do it, but have something to catch Ohio State off guard for sure. The question, I mean, I want to ask you this question. We're on this kind of the topic of strengths and weaknesses. Is like, what do you think is a player that the head coach's absence, like, how does it impact a player specifically, but the team as a whole? Like, I'd love to get your perspective on that.
I think it's devastating. I truly mean that. Again, I got a great example for you. 2010, we win the Sugar Bowl. We go 12-1. We beat Michigan. Then Truss gets fired, and now granted this wasn't a temporary act since he got whacked, and then Luke steps in, and it's just not the same. Yeah, and now Luke he did the best he could. Obviously, he didn't get to bring his own staff in. He kept the whole staff, and frankly, when he went to Cincinnati, none of those guys that were on that staff went with him to Cincinnati. So I mean, he didn't. You can read between the tea leaves how highly he thought of those guys. But I just think that it's just one of those things where, man, I was lucky. I had Jim Tressel. Jim Tressel's maybe the greatest coach in the history of the rivalry because he got us going when Michigan was really, really good. Like 01, Michigan was better than us. 02, they were better than us. 03, we choked. But then, 04, you guys were like 2 touchdown favorites. Came to the horseshoe and we whooped you. Then 05, you guys again.
Teddy
like
Gainer on that punt back, that was just a backbreaker in 04.
No, I know with the dudes with the little headsets on. That's like an iconic photo. But the Michigan teams, it's like because I'm the guy. And people will hate me for saying this, but like I want Michigan to be really good. I want them to be undefeated, just like they are right now. And because I think that I feel much better walking off the field beating an undefeated Michigan team in Ann Arbor. I tell people the greatest feeling in the universe for an Ohio State football player is to win in Ann Arbor. There's nothing better. Mm-hmm. I don't care. And again, I lost 2 national championships. I didn't win one of those, but that's probably the only thing that could top it. But winning in Ann Arbor versus like Jake Long and Chad Henne, and I was with Jake and Chad in Miami with the Dolphins, and 2 of the greatest dudes you could ever meet. And I don't like to say that about Michigan guys, but they were just solid, really good dudes. Like they could have fit in at Ohio State real easy. But, when you play guys that are that good, like Henny, 15 years in the league, Jake, Alan Branch, it means more to me than if, they're the dumpster fire, like under Rich Rod when they're losing to Toledo and that kind of stuff.
2010, 2006, 14, et cetera. Those are just like whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. But like for me, I just think that like losing Harbaugh, it's just tough because those coaches or most of those players are there because of Harbaugh. That he recruited them. He's the guy. When the ship is when it's the stormy seas and he's the captain, like they all look to the captain, and he's gonna make the decisions. He's and like we had Urban. Like I couldn't imagine not having Urban Meyer and having like Tom Herman or Luke Fickell as the head coach in 2012. I couldn't imagine that just because. He's the galvanizing force. He's the motivator. He's the guy he's the guy's working both sides of the ball. Because that's hard part for Sharon is, he's got 3 jobs. Like he's got to coach the O-line, he's got to call the plays, and he has to be the head coach. And that is exceptionally difficult. Now, if he does it, great. But you'd rather have your general helping you out a little bit and making your life a little bit easier. So.
Let me ask you a second question on head coaching. Is do you think personally that Ryan Day? This is a question you're probably going to struggle to answer honestly, but you're an honest guy, Kirk. So let's hear it. Mm-hmm. Do you think Ryan Day not being from Ohio State has hindered him a tad in this game specifically? Because from what I have read and seen and been told, et cetera, like clearly he came over for he was in New Hampshire and working with Chip Kelly, et cetera. Like the first game he ever was at in a Big Ten stadium was his first game as offensive coordinator at Ohio State in 2017. So like, I know it probably does. People say, "Oh wow, he's won, he's done this," but like when Rich Rodriguez barely knew the fight song when he came to do his speech at the podium taking over Michigan, that just turned a lot of people off right away. And I don't think that's the case with Ryan Day, but I do get a kind of sense that the game hasn't been stressed enough. I know for a fact Urban Meyer, 365 days, beat Michigan, et cetera, et cetera. coming out of the 2019 season, going to 2020, did the focus turn to Clemson? Did it turn to Alabama? We've solved Michigan. We crushed them 2 years in a row. I need to go over this next hump. And he took his attention away from Ohio State for a couple of years. Maybe he's regaining it this year.
Well, I think it hinders, it hinders Ryan. Again, if I became the head coach at New Hampshire tomorrow,
yeah,
I don't know that, how deep their rivals Vermont. So I don't know the deep, dark history of the Vermont, New Hampshire, football rivalry. So again, it's just when you're born in Ohio, you grew up in Ohio, especially when you're like me and you grew up in the 90s and Michigan is beating us every single year. And I said on my other podcast, there's all these douchebags from Ohio that would wear Michigan stuff everywhere. Because, Michigan was cool in the 90s, the Fab Five and Charles Woodson. So, Ted Ginn Jr. wanted to go to Michigan. He loved the Deuce. He called Woodson the Deuce. He's like, I want to wear the Deuce. I want to be Charles Woodson. And Lloyd Carr didn't know his name. So you guys lost. So thanks, Lloyd. And plus, Lloyd dogged out Pierre Woods. So that's why you guys didn't get a Glenville guy until Frank Clark. It was a 10-year absence.
I listened to your pod with Teddy Ginn a couple years ago when he said that.
Yeah, he loves Woodson. But anyways, I think that, it's not again, this is just a natural thing. It's not something that Ryan deals with. But, if you grow up in something like Jim Trussell did, he's from Berea and Urban's from Ashtabula and he's a GA here. And Trussell was a coach here in the 80s. He's tight with Earl Bruce. I mean, they're both really tight with Earl Bruce. God rest his soul. You get it a lot more. When you're a player, and I was talking to David Patterson, he's a captain in the 06, the 1-versus-2 game. He's our defensive tackle. He's a captain. And I was like, I get that we have to go national with recruiting because we don't have enough talent in Ohio anymore to just recruit Ohio kids. But I think most of these kids don't really get the rivalry at all because they didn't grow up in it. They didn't watch it on TV as little kids and watch Michigan beat us every year and celebrate and whatever. So they don't have that nastiness and that intensity. And plus, they don't realize how, it's a really hard game. I mean, it's a tough game. I mean, it's a game where I thank God every single day that I played when I played because this game was last weekend. It was the week before Thanksgiving. Because I couldn't imagine going to the Thanksgiving table with my family. And then 2 days later, I got to strap it up and block Lamar Woodley. Because I wouldn't.
What year did they change it? 2007? Or I can't remember what year they changed
it was when they added the Big Ten championship game. So it was after 07. I think it might have been 8 or 9 or something. But I used to love it because there's nothing greater in the world than beating Michigan, going home for that Wednesday night before Thanksgiving when everybody goes to the dive bars. You see everybody from high school and you just beat Michigan and they're just this is amazing. My dad's so happy. Let's take a selfie. Whatever. So
for me, I look back at where the rivalry changed from the late 80s, 90s, Michigan dominating, winning 5 out of 6 for a couple different periods is I think that 2002 class. And it's kind of what you said there is you get Claret. You get a guy, Mike DeAndrea, if you remember him, who was the best defensive player in the country. Justin Zwick, and of course, I was at the Troy Smith's part of that class too, right? In 2002.
Troy, AJ.
I went to high school. I was a little bit. We went to my high school. Mike Kudla, rest in peace to him too. He passed away a couple years ago. But they had number 1, number 2 class in the country, but it was literally the best year for recruiting in Ohio in a couple of years, and you had 11 top 250 guys, and they all had committed early to Tressel, and so they all went to the senior year, Ohio State. And of course, it's impact from day one. You get first game, and Claret goes for 175 and 3 touchdowns. So that class was okay, we're going back to Ohio players play for Ohio. And there was a couple cracks in the armor there, obviously with Crable and Prescott Burgess and Manningham, but once that class matured and got to the national title game in 06, 07, so I guess in theory, some guys in that class made 3 out of 5 national title games. That changed, I think, just the perception of Ohio State in the state of Ohio for all the kids there. And is what you just said there. Ohio State's had to go to a lot of best players from Texas, or Kyle McCord, I think, said yesterday, the day before, his first memory is the 2016 game. Right? I'm doing quick math. I'm okay, he would have probably been in about 7th grade or something like that. So it seems a little old to have that's your first memory, but it's still maybe a valid point how much without an Ohio State guy at the top and then not having overwhelmingly all Ohio players. Just a thought.
No, you're right. Because again, Ohio State, back when we were more talent rich, in the early 2000s, because again, guys you didn't even name. You didn't name AJ Hawk, Nick Mangold, Rob Simpson. Those are NFL Pro Bowl level players that are all from the state of Ohio. when we had that, like, their dads grew up Ohio State fans, so they watched Ohio State from the time they were 3 years old. Like, recently with our propensity of getting guys developed into great wide receivers and quarterbacks and stuff, kids from all over the country want to come to Ohio State now. Now, they didn't grow up like dreaming of playing at Ohio State, but it's just it's the best vehicle there is to get to the league if you're a wide receiver or quarterback. Like, I mean, I couldn't imagine why wouldn't you want Ryan Day to develop you as the next CJ Stroud, who might be the NFL MVP, or Marvin Harrison, Garrett Wilson. I mean, it's the super highway. Trey Henderson is going to be a first or second round pick. So, I think that, granted, we're getting outstanding talent, we're getting JJ Smith, some of these guys that are monsters, but I don't know if the kids necessarily know or care as much about the rivalry. And again, that's fine as long as they get it once they get on the field. Like, they don't have to, sit in there in the dark room watching, the 1969 game on YouTube and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. Like some of us do. But, I'm just saying it's just a little bit different. So, and again, I think that, on top of Ryan, a lot of these coaches, they don't really have any Ohio backgrounds or Ohio ties. Like Tim Walton does. Jim Knowles has none. So that's a little different. Now, Hartline played here, obviously, so he's there. But, I think, like, with Tress, like, our whole staff, like, was, like, from Ohio. Like, Jim Haycock was from Ohio. Like, Jim Bowman was from Ohio. Like, with Urban, his first staff in 12, every single guy had some sort of a tie to Ohio. They were born there. They lived there. They went to high school there, went to college, like something crazy like that. So, and again, I'm not saying that that's like the be all end all, but, with Urban, we knew exactly where he was with the Michigan game. Because we talked about it like every day. And trusted too. And I'm sure Ryan does too, because again, when you lose this game, it is not a cliche that your family's life sucks for the next year. Like his son, who's a freshman and he's a really, really good quarterback. Like people, like they like to say stuff. Again, like a lot of these dads are really mean and vindictive, and their kids their kids just parrot what they say to the kids when they see them in 5th grade. I've seen the stories. I saw Luke Fickle's kids. They say nasty stuff to the dad didn't do good against Michigan State in 2013, and at school the next day, the kids are ruthless. So they know what's at stake, because that's just but that's life in the big city. It's free will. What else you got?
So give me your scouting report on JJ McCarthy. What's your take on him going into this game? What you've seen from the last 2 seasons?
I just think he's a creator. He's a guy that's got exceptional feet. I think that he kills us when he runs. Again, I think that that's something in this game. When I look back to like Troy Smith, in 05, his scrambling, and in 04, his scrambling was just unbelievable. How well he just broke you guys' backs when you guys were running off in man coverage, and he'd go take I call it the free money, when there's all that green in front of you and you could just run and go get 15 yards and you convert to first down. Like those are killers in the Ohio State Michigan game. JJ scrambled in for that touchdown last year. I think he's a good quarterback. I don't think he's like some dominating like world-class NFL prospect. I think he's a little dinged up, but he won. He's a winner. The guy's, he does what he needs to do. He works in the frame of the offense. I think that he has, for Michigan, below average wide receivers compared to when I played, they had like Braylon and Manningham, like guys that are like terrifying, because Manningham could take it to the crib at any second. I loved Mario Manningham when he's at Warren Harding, and I wish he would have gone to Ohio State. It'd be like if we had him and Ted Ginn, I don't know if anybody would have ever beaten us because they were both so good. But Michigan they don't have that guy. They don't have David Terrell. They don't have Braylon Edwards. They don't even have like Adrian Arrington, I don't think. So, I just think that
Walker, there's no one like that. Wilson to me kind of reminds me of Steve Breston, who doesn't return punts.
Even Breston was good, and it's you look back at the Michigan was like wide receiver year for a long time. Those guys they don't want to wear that number 1, and the guy that was wearing number 1 was a Marmaduke. That was Braylon. When you see Braylon on the field in 04, he had like 200 yards against us, and I was like, Can we please put Ashton on him instead of Dustin Fox, please, so we can win this game? And Ashton did better against him than Dustin did, but it was just I'm sitting on that sideline, man. I'm like, damn. I was like, can we please cover that guy? He's their best player by far, and he's a number 3 overall pick. But that's the weird thing to me is Michigan, that was always their thing. They always had that All-American quarterback like Henne. Then they had the big time wide receiver like Braylon or Manningham. And I don't see that, and when they do their ground and pound stuff, and they've got, Coastal Loveland or whatever his name is, split out as a wide receiver. I'm like, well, I'd take that instead of Braylon, or a guy like that. But I mean,
I think
that's
from a wide
good.
receiver perspective, with Roman still maybe a little, concussion protocol kind of stuff. So I still think he's game time decision. I don't know if we'll find out really till Thursday, but I actually think Michigan's going to run a lot of two tight end sets or two tight ends
Oh yeah.
in even in obvious passing downs where you might get only Cornelius Johnson and then two tight ends and maybe Donovan Edwards splits out. So I bet you could have opportunities or things in the game where Michigan's four wide and is literally one wide receiver, two tight ends, and a running back are the four wide receivers right now. Because after Roman Wilson, if he's not playing, which I hope he does. If he's not, though, the next guys are all it's Tyler Morris, who's kind of been an okay three a little bit this year. But then after him, it's just literally three true freshmen that have made any contribution this year. So it'll see what happens. By the way, I saw Super Chat ask me if his fellow media have embarrassed him. I want to make sure Lord Vander Kush $2
Oh.
Super Chat there. Yeah, I am completely embarrassed by Sam Webb, Chris Ballas, Isaiah Hole. This guy, it's what an amazing business model, Kirk. It's that you get on here every day and say, "Hey guys, I know something. I know something. You're gonna find out soon. I can't tell you yet." But I know something. I did know about the pedophile. I did know about that. I just it wasn't my place to tell you, but I know something else, and you're gonna like it. Stay tuned for more. Like that's this guy's video hole for a month straight. It's been absolutely hilarious, and those guys have just been wrong on everything. And so, look, I hope there's some truth to Ryan Day broke a law with his brother and everything like that. But who cares at this point? If Michigan did something, it's not going to change anything on the Michigan side. So I think those guys have done a really disingenuous job, and it just it's like sports and politics just mirror each other so much. And I've been able to, over the last 15 years of my life, et cetera, I've supported a candidate from the Republican Party and the Democratic Party. And I just go like, that guy is an idiot. I think, not to get political, I think Joe Biden's a complete idiot. So I would probably vote for anybody against him. I just want to be president. And if he was a Republican, I would say the same thing in the opposite, where a guy like Sam Webb with Michigan, he just can't have an objective bone in his body. He just can't.
No.
And I think it makes Michigan fans in general look stupid when they parrot his talking points. I'm sure Ohio State has plenty of those too. We've talked about a couple of them in the past, but it just in general, I think those three or four guys are just complete schmucks at this point.
Yeah, I mean, we've got the same crew over here. They do what they do, and it is what it is, and God bless them. Another super chat, more 1600. Thanks for the deuce parlay that makes up this chat's costs plus or minus at 46. I'm not sure what that means. Can you expound upon that? That'd be great. Do you know what that means, James? I'm a gambler, but I don't know. Not sure what that is.
Maybe he's saying that he's parlaying something against the over/under there, and if he wins, he's going to get himself an extra $2 to cover the chat. I don't know, but I think my head says this will be the lowest scoring game we've seen in a long time. My heart says that Michigan's going to drop 40 plus on them like the last 2 years, and it'll shut down Ohio State. So I made my prediction on a heart. I got it right. I got Michigan score right in 2021, and I think I said I think it's the third year in a row. I'm going Michigan 42-24. They could win the game, but I don't actually believe that necessarily because the defenses are just continue to level up. I think even this Michigan defense, I think, is better than the one 2 years ago. I think certainly better than last year, just a little bit. And I think Ohio State is significantly better than last year at this point. So I think it could be one of those games where it's like 24-17, 24-21. And so if I was betting on this game, I would honestly go under that 46 and a half if you're parlaying it against anything.
So you think that this defense is better than 2 years ago with Hutchinson?
Yeah.
I mean, I believe you.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you could probably say that Hutchinson and Ojabo were bigger difference makers than anybody that Michigan has right now. I kind of look at like the offensive line. It's twofold. It's talent and depth, and they've been rotating these guys in. And Michigan's going 4 deep on the inside of the defensive line with guys over 330 pounds. And I think the best player on the defensive line the past month has been backup Kenneth Grant there at the nose tackle position. And they're going 4 deep on the outside. I think the best 2 pass rushers are the backups in Derek Moore and then Josiah Stewart, the transfer from Coastal Carolina, who was just a sack machine over there. And they're, the guys in front of him, starters in some way, shape, or form. Jalen Harrell, and I guess Braden McGregor was kind of a quasi-starter, but not the entire year last year. So you got 8 guys there, both returning linebackers, plus you added a starting linebacker from Nebraska in Ernest Hausman. And the secondary, there was only one weakness of a non-returning starter. That was the cornerback 2 role. You're returning both safeties. You're returning Sainer Still. Obviously, Will Johnson, I think, might be the best player in the Big Ten next season. And you brought a guy over, Josh Wallace, who hasn't been a star, but has at least been a pretty good player that you're not at a disadvantage like starting a redshirt freshman who's got no game experience. He was a 3-year starter at UMass. Ironically, last year under Don Brown, funny enough, as his head coach and defensive coordinator in some regard. So I think the defense as a total, it's got so much depth that I think overcomes that lack of maybe all-star, superstar talent on the defensive ends like you had 2 years ago. So I think the defense for Michigan, I put them slightly above. And the stats have kind of proved it out. Now, the haters are going to say it's all Stallions. But if you shut out a team in the third quarter for 10 straight games to start the year, I mean, that's something you just can't overlook.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it'll be, we gotta get after them up front. Like I said, they're gonna be the matchup is like the two D lines versus the two O lines is always the matchup. But the skill guys are what wins the Ohio State Michigan game. It's always been like that. The lines are always kind of even. They're both good. But like you look at the skill guys, and I think that in my history, we obviously had Teddy, we had Santonio, we had Olave, like these guys, Ezekiel. It's like last year, you guys had your tailback, you had your receiver go for 1 million yards because the guys were like falling down on the turf and whatever.
Yeah.
I got the super chat. David, appreciate you for the 5. Kirk, I don't see a scenario where Scum scores over 17. I see their offense as slightly worse than ND and defense slightly better. 31 at $17. See, I think it's going to be like a 24-17-ish kind of game, especially if it rains or there's any type of weather. I think it's going to get physical and it's going to be run the ball. And I don't like running at the 2 big D tackles. I think those are the best guys on the defense. I'd rather go with those ends. Just my opinion. I think the ends are average, but they're not Brandon Graham or Woodley or like the guy Hutchinson, the guys that you guys have had in the past that are like, yeah, we better like not try that guy too many times because it won't end well.
What do you know about? Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was gonna say, tell me about. I've seen all the hype for the last several years, and a lot of it was, why isn't he playing? And then he should play more. Sonny Styles. Tell me about Sonny Styles because he's not been an area of focus. I remember him being a big 5-star recruit a couple of years ago, and I was talking to a friend on the phone this morning, and it's like, oh yeah, Sonny Styles is gonna do X, Y, and Z. I'm like, I know the name. I remember the recruit, et cetera, but like I watch every Ohio State game. I've just never seen him as a guy that's like, oh, that guy there. I got to watch out for him. So why is a couple of my friends telling me that Styles is just such a difference maker?
Physically might be one of the best players ever played. He's probably the best physical specimen on the team. 6'4", about 225, linebacker, safety. Lathan Ransom, he's a great kid, good player, is the guy that you guys exploited a lot last year.
Past Ransom.
Yeah, exactly. Well, Well, not just in the pass game, but in the run game. Because the way, like, with formationally, like against you guys in Georgia, they would, the way we would set our defense, we would spin a lot of runs back to Lathan to make the play, and he couldn't do it. And so, against Georgia and you guys, we gave up a lot of runs where Lathan couldn't get the guy on the ground. And he's hurt. And again, he's a great kid. But now, like, it forces Jim Knowles to play Sonny Styles. Like, Sonny Styles is a guy that we were playing him at Sam linebacker, like the walked out nickel hybrid guy playing over the slot. And he's terrifying. I mean, he's 6'4", 225. He runs a 4.4. I mean, if you want to watch something crazy, watch him play basketball. Because, I mean, he's like windmill, reverse, 360 dunks. And, I mean, just for a gigantic human being, he is as fluid as anybody you could ever imagine. So he's that dude. Now he's young. You gotta remember, he reclassified. He's like Quinn
17
Ewers.
years old when he enrolled, like he was there last year. 17.
Yeah, he's like Quinn Ewers. He skipped his senior year of high school to go to Ohio State. So he's a true sophomore this year, but he's the age of a true freshman, if that makes sense. So so I mean, again, like he's just kind of scratching the surface, and he'll be a guy that'll be a preseason All-American next year. Good chance he goes pro after next year, and he'll be a 20-year-old first-round draft pick. But he's a guy that, again, like sometimes in football, there's guys that you're loyal to because they're older, they've done everything the right way. Like Lathan Ransom's that guy. He's a really good player, probably gonna be a late-round draft pick if he's healthy and can run decent at the combine, like Ronnie Hickman. But Ronnie didn't get drafted; he's undrafted. He's playing for the Browns now. But him getting hurt now makes Jim Knowles he's forced to play Sonny. And in the Ohio State Michigan game, the biggest difference between Ohio State this year and last year, other than the defenses being more cohesive, is our safeties. Because now we've got Josh Proctor, who's playing like an All-American, and we got Sonny Salas, who next year probably will be an All-American. So we've got like big hitter safeties. Like last year when we had Tanner McAllister and Ronnie Hickman and I mean, those guys weren't going to fill in the run like these two guys do. I mean, Josh Proctor will knock you into next week. He'll put you in concussion protocol. And Sonny is, like I said, he's like, people like to compare him to Isaiah Simmons from Clemson, who was a top 10 pick, busted out in the NFL with the Cardinals, got traded to the Giants. But I think Sonny's much more physical than him. Isaiah might have been a little bit more fluid, but not much more fluid. But Sonny is like, I mean, he'll put it on you now. I mean, his old man played for the Rams, played in the NFL for 10 years. He's a tough dude. I mean, raises kids tough, So, I mean, Lorenzo Salas Sr. is no joke. So, Sonny's like a bigger, faster version of dad.
I'll tell you, I've got my son, the word ransom in the way related to the player has become like last year, like a household thing. He'll be like running up the stairs and literally just out of nowhere, he'll just yell, "Gets past ransom." Because I've said it so many times. And we've watched, I've like forced him to watch those 2 runs in the fourth quarter. Like I'm not even joking, like 500 times in the past year. And it's just like a thing that he says now. He'll throw a ball up to himself and just yell, "Gets past ransom," and run down the house, which is kind of hilarious. So I told him that I wasn't playing. He was like, "Oh man, no gets past ransom." Nevertheless. So I got about 4 or 5 minutes here. I got to jump another interview at 3 Eastern. But want to hear my last question for you, and then maybe we can do your score prediction, is Kyle McCord. I like Kyle McCord. I know Stroud's killing the NFL. I thought he probably should have won the job in 2021, and maybe that pass-happy offense is not what Ohio State needed, and it forced the bad defensive tendencies. I'm just saying. Nevertheless, I think certainly Kyle, from what I've seen, which is every snap this year, has looked inconsistent at times. And I'm always shocked when I look at the box score, either after the game or during the game, Notre Dame game especially. I'm like, oh man, he's got to be like, 13 of 31 right now. And you check it, and it's 18 of 27. I'm like, it just feels like he's missed more passes than he has. So the numbers are kind of creeping up and getting, better. I mean, he's got more passing yards and touchdowns than JJ at this point. But I do think there is certainly some flaws and maybe a step down from where Ohio State's been the last, honestly, since Troy Smith in 2006. Give me the take from your perspective on Kyle McCord, what he needs to do, what maybe things that you worry about coming up on Saturday.
Well, I think the biggest thing is his pocket presence has to be at a higher level. Like he sometimes gets a little lost in the sauce when he's back in the pocket, doesn't step up. Our tackles are giving up some sacks where people yell the tackles, and I'm like, guys, like Kyle's got to step up a little bit. He can't hang way back in the pocket, waiting forever for Marvin to get open. And I think that something that one of the biggest advantages he has, like coming down the stretch, is that Trey Henderson's back. And again, like when you've got Trey Henderson and Marvin Harrison, and now Emeka's back too. Like, you don't have to go out there and be God at quarterback. You could just be like, you have a B+ game and beat pretty much anybody because you let those guys, do the work. Trey Henderson has been absolutely fantastic. He's probably the best running back in the country right now. And, we didn't have him for at least half the season. So, after Notre Dame game, he was out for 4 or 5 games, and, he's back and he's hungry, and yeah, I'm sure he wants to go first round. He sees Bijan and Jahmyr Gibbs, and that's kind of what he's targeting. And he, with the knock on him being durability, like you're about to play Godzilla on Saturday. So if you can go slay Godzilla in Ann Arbor, then it's going to go a lot. Because again, it's like I tell these guys, I'm like, look, you guys want to go play in the league? You guys want to go early? This is the game. This is the first game that GMs watch, that scouts watch, that every NFL line coach or position coach is going to watch. Like, they're going to watch Ohio State, Michigan. They're not going to play, Youngstown State and, Tulsa and all these other turds that we play. Like, they're going to watch the Michigan game because it'll be physical. It'll be violent. Michigan will be very well coached. And again, I just think that, Kyle just has to stay within himself because he has a knack for making really dumb plays, like bonehead plays, turnovers, picks that don't make any sense. And you got to avoid those. Again, like to beat Michigan, Jim Tressel had the most easy formula of all time. You got to win the rushing battle, so we get outrush you guys. You have to win the turnover margin, which means we can't turn it over and we have to force turnovers. And then we have to have fantastic special teams. Like, we can't screw up a fake punt. We can't get a punt blocked. You can't rough the punter. You got to return kicks like Ted Ginn used to or whatever. You got to be clean on special teams, and that was his formula. And it's like he would put an overhead up of every Michigan game ever, and he would show those things, and it was uncanny. Like the rushing, especially out of the last 30 years, the rushing battle has been lost one time by the winner of the game. So it's like the
last 5 have been crazy. Like, it's like you just look at it. I got the numbers: 2022, 252 to 143, 297 to 64 in 2021, 264 Ohio State to 91 in 19, 171, 161 in 18. That was the blowout with 6 touchdowns from Haskins. Then
Haskins.
226 to 100 in 2017. Remember, that was the year 2017. Michigan had a 14-point lead in the end of the first quarter, right? So like it's just clear. And you go back there, it's like, yeah, one time in the past 30 years. So Henderson for me, I'll wrap it up with this, is he's the difference. I think Michigan's defensive strategy the last couple of years has been, we want them to throw. We want them to throw. We want them to go to that, feel like they're getting success. And we figured out the red zone, which Stroud struggled at in the red zone, right? That we were talking about earlier. JJ struggled in the red zone. And then, so then they had to go to the pass, the rush game. Is if Michigan can stop Henderson early and forcing Ohio State to throw, I think that gets Ryan Day back into his wheelhouse, his groove. Okay, we're going to pass our way out of this, which I think will fall right into Michigan's hands. If Henderson goes over 100, Ohio State's going to win the game. I don't care what any other players do when rushing is concerned. If Henderson's able to move the ball and he is dominant, then that's just going to, they're going to have to drop somebody off of maybe Harrison once in a while. They're going to have to blitz like they did in that touchdown where Stroud hit Harrison last year, a random blitz where prior to that, they've been having a safety kind of covering both sides of the field. So that's what I'm looking for. It's Henderson's the difference in the game. I think Michigan will be able to run at times, but if they're trying to play catch up to Ohio State, who's running the ball on their throat, that's how Ohio State gets the win. My prediction, which is a little crazy, but you know the reasons why, 42-24, Michigan. Kirk, give me a prediction.
I'm going to go 24-17, Ohio State. Again, I think it's going to be an ugly, nasty game. And, again, this is, Ryan Day's got a lot of heat on him, a lot of pressure on him. Because, again, this is, you got it on easy mode. It's never on easy mode against Michigan, but their head coach is gone. You got a guy who's trying to balance 3 jobs. It's never easy to beat Michigan ever, like in history. Yeah. But, you can't lose to Sharon Moore. Like, I'm sorry. So this is going to be, it's going to be.
You saw what Urban said in Big Ten Network last week, right? You just can't lose to an interim coach and still coach Ohio State.
You can't.
I can't believe Urban said that. Wink, wink.
I'll say it, but I know Urban was on tilt when he doesn't realize, like, you do that all the time. Like, you make up a quote and you record the thing on silent, and then you say, oh, here's where Ryan Day said that.
I don't know what you're talking about, Kirk. I heard what I heard, and that's
here's Ryan Day saying that he hired Connor Stallions to coach as a GA this week versus Michigan, and it'll just be like Ryan sitting there like moving his lips, and they'll be like,
sounds like a good tweet coming up from me on Thursday or Friday. Sounds like a good one. I'll give you a little hat tip when I send it out.
I appreciate you, my man. I will catch up with you. Let's do this again soon. Cool.
Yeah, sure. We should do a recap on Sunday, Monday next week. Just kind of revise what happened in the game, and then I'll text you later, and we'll sync up a little more. Cool.
All right, sounds good, brother. Appreciate you.
Later.
That being said, there's my boy James Yoder. Follow him on Chat Sports. He's got a ton of content. He's actually a good dude, really good dude for a Michigan guy. So I appreciate you guys tuning in, getting a little bit of the other side of the scoop. So we had James on again. He's excellent, and check out his stuff. That being said, as always, thank you so much, Buckeye Nation. Thank you, Scoop family. If you enjoy this, leave us a like, click subscribe, and also click that little alert bell. Happy Thanksgiving. It's time to go beat the Wolverines. Go Bucks.